How's it going, friends? I got a crazy story for you today. In the past 2 months, economic migrants from Eritrea have carried out culturally enriching mob violence in at least 8 different cities, in 7 different countries, on 3 different continents. And none of those continents are Africa, where Eritrea is located. Now, this story sounds completely unbelievable. You couldn't even make it up. I would not believe this was even true unless there was all the cell phone videos. So, some brief background. Eritrea used to be part of Italian East Africa. In 1941, the British captured it from the Italians. In 1950, the United States negotiated an agreement to give Eritrea to the Kingdom of Ethiopia under Emperor Haile Selassie. He wanted Eritrea for obvious reasons so he could have ports. Well, Eritrea became a semi-autonomous region of Ethiopia, but in the Eritrean highlands in the north western corner, a group started called the ELF, or Eritrean Liberation Front. Now their logo is this wreath and tree thing, which was green on a light blue background. Well, by the early 70s, a larger independence movement was underway called the EPLF, the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, which was openly communist. Now, their flag was this, but with a yellow star right here. They fought for independence against Ethiopia. They were given their independence in 1991. In 1993, they were widely recognized around the world as an independent country. Now, here's the thing. In the 70s and 80s, the ELF and the EPLF both fought against Ethiopia, but they also had violent warfare against each other. Now, this flag is a reconciliation flag. They took the two flags, the ELF and the EPLF, and combined them. They replaced the yellow communist star with the ELF logo. One of the original leaders of the EPLF became the first president of independent Eritrea in 1991, and he's still president today. Now, for many years now, a lot of Eritreans have been illegally immigrating to other countries. It's largely young males, largely from middle-class families. Now, often, and this is even admitted in mainstream media, they pay thousands of dollars to make this journey. If you look up Eritrea, the average wage is $400 per year. So these are people with money in the bank. And they leave Eritrea, which has been at peace since 1991. They enter actual war zones like Yemen and Libya, and they pay thousands of dollars to criminal syndicates and jihadist groups to smuggle them around. And they go from country to country to country until they get to one that has lucrative welfare benefits and public housing. Now, the media falsely calls these people asylum seekers. In fact, many thousands of the Eritreans in Europe have filed asylum claims. The claims were deemed to be illegitimate. They were ordered to self-deport, but they just never leave. And no one is actually deporting them. So they just stay there. Last July, there was a Eritrean cultural festival in Gießen, Germany, and it turned into a big riot. Now, at the time, it didn't look like there was an actual political battle between groups of rival Eritreans. In fact, there is reports of random German pedestrians being attacked, and in video clips, you see German pedestrians helping the police tackle Eritreans to arrest them. This was also the second year in a row that Eritreans rioted at the same cultural festival. And so it just looked like the annual Eritrean riot. Well, a few weeks later, there was an even bigger riot in Stockholm, Sweden. And this one, you had hundreds of Eritreans beating each other with clubs. And then they started setting cars on fire. I mean, it was a full-fledged major event. Well, starting with Stockholm, we see something, I'm going to call them the Blue Shirt Club. So you had these guys showing up at Eritrean events wearing light blue shirts, and a lot of them are carrying the ELF flag, the light blue Eritrean Liberation Front flag, and they also use the flag of whatever country they're in. So you'll see like Swedish or American or Swiss flags, whatever country they're in, they'll have some of those flags too. And they try to portray themselves as the good guys. So, and their rhetoric is a lot like Antifa and the far left. Essentially, on social media, they're saying, if someone holds an Eritrean festival of any kind, if they're not openly opposed to the president of Eritrea, then they're supporters of the regime. So you can't be neutral. You have to be one or the other. So, and if they're not on the side of the Blue Shirt Club, it's a hate festival. I mean, they use the exact same rhetoric as the far left. And they say that they're going there to protest hate. They make up the exact same fake narrative that Antifa uses after it turns into a giant riot. They say, we just showed up to peacefully protest, and for no reason they attacked us and we had to defend ourselves. But of course, they go there armed with clubs. It's a total joke. Look at this picture from Toronto, Canada. This is a flagpole that one of these blue shirt guys brought. Now, after the orgy of violence in Stockholm, well, other cities were wise to what was going to happen. So you had violent rioting at Eritrean cultural festivals in Toronto, Canada, Edmonton, Canada, and Seattle in the United States. In Toronto and Edmonton, the riot police were staged in advance. In fact, there's video from Edmonton where they've got cops on rooftops with binoculars watching everything. They're holding a soccer tournament as part of the event. There's cop cars lined up along the soccer field. And then there's riot police already staged not far away so they can rush in at any minute. In front of all these cops in the middle of the soccer game, all of a sudden it just explodes into an orgy of people beating each other with clubs. And the cops were able to shut it down pretty fast, but there was still supposedly a bunch of people injured, just like a bunch of people were injured in Toronto. Now, in Seattle, Washington, they had this event, and this apparently is a huge annual event that's been going on for decades. And it was held at multiple locations, one of which is a major convention center in Seattle. And then a part of it was held, a street is blocked off, and both sides of the street were lined with, the pop-up festival tents. Well, there's video on Twitter of Eritreans partying in the street and listening to music. And then there's video after that of all the tents are smashed up, all kinds of merchandise is thrown out into the streets, and the Blue Shirt Club, they're all marching around triumphantly screaming stuff in Eritrean, or they speak Tigray or something. And there's a small number of Seattle cops who aren't doing anything. Of course, in Seattle, it's basically legal to riot. I mean, there's riots all the time. The cops stand down and watch it. And then even if people are arrested after the fact, the radical district attorney's office drops all the charges anyway. On Saturday, September 2nd, there was Eritrean events in Bergen, Norway, a suburb of Zurich, Switzerland, and Tel Aviv, Israel. Now, these were timed to correspond with Eritrean independence celebrations. These three were probably more overtly political than a lot of the past events, which were basically appear to be neutral, particularly in Tel Aviv because the Eritrean embassy was holding it. Now, in Bergen, Norway, they were wise to what was going to happen. So the riot police were already staged. And as soon as they started beating each other, the riot police rushed in. In Switzerland, apparently, they tried to prevent them from even having this event. The organizers just went to a park and staged an unauthorized, unpermitted event. And of course, at the same time, the Blue Shirt Club was apparently hunting for them. And Swiss media says between 150 to 200 people were beating each other in this park. And there's video clips where the police are detaining dozens of people. Supposedly only 3 people were arrested, but there was 12 people injured, 7 seriously. But the big violence on Saturday was in Tel Aviv. And the funny part is that the Eritrean embassy in Tel Aviv was putting this on. And supposedly some Eritreans went to the government and explained what was going to happen. And it was dismissed. Like, they didn't think it was true, I guess. I don't know. And so this event, the embassy is full of people in purple shirts. And then the Blue Shirt Club shows up with all kinds of clubs and weapons. And some of them start storming the embassy. And then all these people with purple shirts and their own clubs and weapons start pouring out of the embassy. And then they just start beating each other in the streets. I mean, the footage is completely insane. They're saying now that over 130 Eritreans were injured, with about 14 of them with very serious injuries. Then there was over 24 cops injured once the police showed up. In fact, the media in Tel Aviv is saying that hospitals had to bring in extra personnel who were on their day off to cope with all the wounded people coming in. So what is happening exactly? The short answer is you have this Blue Shirt Club that opposes the current president of Eritrea, and any event that is not explicitly anti the current president, they show up and engage in violence, which they refer to as fighting hate. A longer explanation would be that this has its origins in violence that was raging in Eritrea back in the 70s and 80s. And now they have this alleged brutal dictator who won't let them fight in Eritrea, so they leave Eritrea and battle it out in other people's countries. And by the way, the Clinton administration praised the Eritrean president as a model African leader. And I think Bill Clinton even called him the man who's at the forefront of a new African Renaissance. And then George W. Bush, his administration seems to have supported him. It wasn't until about the second half of the Obama administration that America seems to have turned against the president of Eritrea. But at the same time, he was getting close with Russia. So it might have been that he was too close to Russia, so the U.S. State Department turned against him for that reason. I have no idea. All right, thanks for watching this video. Click the like button, post a comment below, tell me what you think about all this. And this video has been sponsored by National Conservative. Check out their website at national-conservative.com or natcon.life. And please subscribe to my backup channels on Odyssey, BitChute, and Twitter. And click the subscribe button. New video every few days.